How do relationships with a narcissist destroy your life? People often think that they're simply unhappy in a relationship with a narcissist. In reality, that's not the case. This is a huge underestimation of the destructive impact. It's a serious underestimation because a narcissist doesn't just make your life unpleasant, difficult, or even unbearable. They destroy it on all fronts. They destroy it on all fronts. The consequences of such relationships last for years. The consequences of such relationships last for years, and many of them remain for a lifetime if you don't work through them. And in this video, I will talk specifically about these long-term consequences. By the way, if you already feel that you are stuck in a relationship scenario with a narcissist, be sure to join my free workshop, Narcissist Manipulations. Be sure to join my free workshop, Narcissist Manipulations. How to recognize them and stop falling for them. How to recognize them and stop falling for them. The link to register is right here below in the pinned comment. Pause this video right now and sign up for the workshop. And be sure, guys, to watch this video until the end, because at the end I will explain what the most significant changes are that happen in a person's brain as a result of long-term relationships with a narcissist. And this might motivate you not to wait, not to drag things out, but finally to end this relationship and make a choice in your own favor. And this might motivate you not to wait, not to drag things out, but finally to end this relationship and make a choice in your own favor. So let's take a look at all these consequences. The first one, of course, is your mental health. It turns out to be severely undermined, and things like constant apathy, panic attacks, all of this you can notice right away. In cancer, you can notice all of this immediately. It's not as if I'm revealing some secret to you. It's not as if I'm telling you something you didn't already know. But when talking about your mental health, it's important for you to know, to notice, to focus your attention on the fact that these relationships completely change your self-perception. The focus is on the fact that these relationships fundamentally alter how you see yourself. In other words, you truly stop seeing yourself as someone who can effectively handle life's challenges, as someone who can genuinely live happily and contentedly, as someone who can consistently make reasonable and sound choices, take sensible and appropriate actions, and behave appropriately in all situations. You start seeing yourself as a person who, without the narcissist, without that magic wand, your self-perception changes. And this is the scariest part. Because of this shift in self-perception, your sense of hopelessness grows. It feels like everything is hopeless, both with them and without them, as if there's no way out at all. And it feels as if there's absolutely no way out at all. And I've already mentioned, yes, that panic attacks, well, anxiety can be so intense that it might never go away. I've already said that that anxiety can be so strong that it might either pass or never pass at all. But sometimes anxiety can grow so much that it leads to panic attacks. You will live in a constant state of guilt and shame. I don't know what I'm guilty of, but I know that I am guilty. I don't know what I'm guilty of, but I know that I am guilty. I know he will come and he will find what I'm guilty of. I know he will come and he will find what I'm guilty of. And the feeling of shame isn't always like that. And the feeling of shame isn't always, oh, I'm embarrassed that my strap showed from my neckline. Oh, I'm embarrassed that my strap showed from my neckline. No, the feeling of shame is when you see yourself as unacceptable, when you feel you have no right to be here, no right to be competent or to consider yourself competent, no right to see yourself as a worthy person. I have no right to see myself as a worthy person. That is deep internal shame. That is deep internal shame. And because of this whole combination, you may start having suicidal thoughts. You may start having suicidal thoughts, meaning they can manifest as very clear suicidal thoughts, imagining how you would do it. They can also appear as simply not wanting to live. For example, you wake up in the morning and don't want to get out of bed, and you think, it would be better if I hadn't woken up. It would be great to just not wake up at all, because another day of this torment feels like too much to bear. Now let's talk about the consequences for your social life and your relationships. First and foremost, you'll notice that it's isolation. And the narcissist, the narcissist isolates their partner, but then even after the relationship with the narcissist ends, people who have experienced this often continue to remain in isolation because they have heightened sensitivity, subtitles by Dima Torzok, but they have grown. And it's very hard for them to be around people. It's hard. Every touch is painful because there are constant flashbacks to the past, but the person doesn't realize this. And it just seems to them that being around people is simply painful and uncomfortable. The next thing that can happen is increased conflict. This doesn't happen to everyone, but it does happen sometimes. It doesn't happen to everyone, but it does happen. So, for example, a person is used to the narcissist always having malicious. So, for example, a person is used to the narcissist always having malicious intentions toward them. And the intention, he's used to fighting back, snapping back. He's used to the idea that if you don't snap and bite with all your might, you'll just get trampled. He's used to the idea that if you don't snap and bite with all your might, you'll just get trampled. He now sees malicious intent where there is none, once bitten, twice shy. He sees evil where it doesn't exist, flinching at shadows after being burned by milk, making it very difficult for others to communicate with him. This is one possible scenario, but it doesn't always happen this way. This is just one possibility, and it doesn't happen to everyone. It tends to happen to those who, in a relationship with a narcissist, were able to argue with them, those who could stand up to them in arguments. Because not all narcissists are the same and every relationship is different. In some cases, people were able to argue and defend themselves only through arguments, while in others, they couldn't do anything at all and were completely deprived of their rights. Those who had no rights were always the ones found guilty. Such people tend to go to the other extreme, emotional detachment. Emotional detachment, meaning, what's the point? Why even talk? No one will understand anyway. Why try to explain anything? Everything you say will be used against you. Why try to explain anything if everything you say will be used against you? So they don't even try. They don't even try with people who aren't narcissists. They don't even try to test a person or give them a chance because they automatically assume it's all pointless, that everyone is hostile toward them, that no one will ever understand or accept them. That's how they'll accept it. And this is the second opposite, the other extreme of this situation. This is the other extreme of this situation. Dependence on toxic relationships, dependence on toxic relationships. Such a person may lose the ability to enter into healthy relationships for their entire life, again, unless they take steps toward healing. Such a person may lose the ability to enter into healthy relationships for their entire life, again, unless they take steps toward healing, and they will seek out toxic relationships. And they will seek out toxic relationships. And in our practices and on the topic of manipulations, we specifically analyze these kinds of manipulations that people who are drawn to toxic relationships fall for. We specifically analyze these kinds of manipulations that people who are drawn to toxic relationships fall for. That is, a person who is not oriented toward toxic relationships will simply walk by. They'll even say, "Oh, that's disgusting." A person oriented toward toxic relationships runs toward these manipulations with excitement. They eagerly fall for them. So guys, pause the video and follow the link in the pinned comment to sign up for this workshop. Register now. Next up is work and finances. This area of life suffers greatly for people because narcissistic abuse destroys your self-confidence. It undermines your ability to achieve goals. This area of life suffers greatly for people because narcissistic abuse kills your self-confidence. It destroys your ability to reach your goals. And in the area of work and finances, it is very important to have a healthy ability to push forward, to ask for a promotion, a raise, or to inquire about what training or certification you need to complete to get a salary increase. It may even mean looking for another job with growth opportunities if your current job offers no more advancement. So pushing upwards is normal. Wanting something more is normal. Wanting something more is normal. This is a normal part of everyone's life. People follow their own life path. They don't just sit still. People don't just sit still. No one's life path is about spending it sitting on the couch. No one's life path is about spending it sitting on the couch. But because a person is deeply traumatized, first of all, it's very hard to concentrate. The ability disappears. Many people say they have attention deficit. Many people say they have attention deficit, and the mechanisms that start, the changes that begin in a person's brain, they really are similar to attention deficit. It's very hard for a person to concentrate. Even after years of separation from the narcissist, living without them, nothing changes. Their thoughts are still occupied with trying to prove something to the narcissist, or to appear good in front of them, or to accuse them so others understand the narcissist is truly bad and you are not to blame. Or searching for an explanation for their behavior, or searching for an explanation for your own behavior, telling yourself that you did everything you could, but it just wasn't possible for you to save this relationship, or searching for an explanation for their behavior, or searching for an explanation for your own behavior, telling yourself that you did everything you could, but saving this relationship was not within your power, or trying to please them. In general, your mind is constantly occupied, and you have no resources left to focus on your own work. The second point is burnout. Burnout happens to a person in this situation quite quickly because they are in a state of constant stress in their interpersonal relationships and they can no longer handle any emotional load. If something happens at work, that's it. It just breaks down the whole system. They say it's the last straw that breaks the camel's back. Financial instability can begin for a person because of all the factors mentioned above. Because the narcissist will also interfere with your ability to earn money. He will devalue your achievements. He will tell you that you are good for nothing and incapable, so you shouldn't even try. He may drain money from you, meaning there can be all sorts of situations, and all of this will affect both your ability to earn money and your ability to save it. You might develop an addiction to impulsive shopping or to antidepressants just to improve your emotional state in this way. Just to improve your emotional state in this way. The next area that suffers greatly from narcissistic abuse is, of course, your physical health. Quite often, and most commonly, people develop chronic fatigue. You know, when a person is carrying a burden, and since this burden isn't physical, they think it's not really a burden. When a person is carrying a burden, and since it's not a physical one, they believe it's not a burden at all. But carrying all this tension in your emotions is no less work than carrying 10 bags weighing 100 kilograms each. And that's why it's no surprise that the person is constantly tired. And that's why it's no surprise that the person is always exhausted. And naturally, this doesn't just happen in your emotions, it affects your body as well. And naturally, this doesn't just happen in your emotions, it affects your body as well. Then problems with the immune system begin. Immunity can either decrease or, on the contrary, deviate in the other direction. It can either decrease or, on the contrary, deviate in the other direction. That is, autoimmune diseases appear because your body is constantly in a state of fight or flight. In such a state, it simply makes no sense, or rather, it's impossible for the body to function normally. Tissue repair and cleansing processes all occur when the body is resting, when the body is relaxed. But for a person in a relationship with a narcissist, the body is never relaxed. And that's why all sorts of psychosomatic illnesses begin. Headaches, neuralgia, stomach pain, muscle tension, migraines, and the person goes from doctor to doctor, but no one can really say anything. There are no clear diagnoses. They go from doctor to doctor, but no one can really say anything. There are no real diagnoses, just vague ones written on the medical records, something like vascular dystonia or something similar, which isn't really a diagnosis at all. So what are you supposed to do if you have dystonia? Does that make you feel any better? No. They just say you need to change your lifestyle, reduce stress. But people even remove the narcissist from their lives, and yet this internal dialogue with the narcissist remains and continues to sustain the psychosomatic illness that the narcissist caused in the first place. The next thing is self-destructive behavior. Because a person's psyche uses the defense mechanism of autoaggression. The next thing is self-destructive behavior because a person's psyche uses the defense mechanism of autoaggression. And a person might potentially start drinking alcohol, might even start smoking cigarettes, and of course might also start using illicit drugs, though that is indeed the most extreme and serious case. In this case, yes, the less extreme forms are overeating, gambling addiction, binge watching TV series, or endlessly scrolling through social media. The less extreme forms are overeating, gambling addiction, binge watching TV series, or endlessly scrolling through social media. A person withdraws from life and runs away from solving their real life problems. A person's life is falling apart while they scroll through their phone. A person's life is falling apart while they scroll through their phone. Problems accumulate to the point where, once piled up, they turn into huge problems. These mega problems turn into terra problems and so on, increasing by orders of magnitude. Giga comes first, right after mega, and so on. It keeps escalating, it keeps getting worse and worse. Some people inflict physical pain on themselves to numb emotional pain. Some experienced this in childhood and I wasn't spared. Some had this in childhood and I went through it too. People who can see me up close physically might notice small scars on my wrists, which I hope to someday remove with cosmetic procedures, or perhaps leave as a reminder. Maybe I'll keep them as a reminder, I don't know. But in adolescence, it's especially unbearable, though there are people who continue to do this even as adults. In adulthood, it's especially unbearable, but there are people who continue to do this even as adults. That is, teenagers are overwhelmed. I was doing this at 15. I was overwhelmed, and for me, life truly seemed absolutely hopeless. There was no way out. There simply couldn't be, because I couldn't imagine it. I didn't have enough life experience. I didn't know enough people. I didn't even have that knowledge of how things could be for others. But when an adult does this, it shows. They know that there are other people who manage life just fine, who build their lives well. When an adult does this, it shows. They know that there are other people who manage life just fine, who build their lives well. There is information that I can process and put to use to solve my problems. I can put it to use to solve my problems. There are specialists I can turn to. There are specialists I can turn to. But a person still self-harms because they no longer have the strength to cope. But a person still self-harms because they no longer have the strength to cope. That is to go down the path, and there is no strength left to solve one's problem. And this is a very, very difficult situation. Such a person already needs to see a specialist stronger than just a counseling psychologist. Such a person already needs to see a specialist stronger than just a counseling psychologist. And for a while, just focus on relieving the shock from stress and your emotions. And for a while, just focus on relieving the shock from stress and your emotions. And sometimes it's neglecting self-care. That is, for many victims of narcissistic abuse, taking care of themselves seems almost criminal. I can't even take a shower in peace, my client says. I stand under the shower and feel guilty for doing something for myself. Now, as promised, I'll tell you how being in a relationship with a narcissist changes your brain. Look, when a person spends a long time in a relationship with a narcissist, their amygdala becomes hypersensitive. It is constantly aroused, constantly active, always scanning the environment for danger. Because it feels that danger is always present, it never ends. And this scanning happens constantly. This scanning is ongoing, and at the same time, the amygdala is always ready to explode, to erupt with alarm signals. The amygdala is always on the verge of exploding with signals of anxiety. And when this activity is constantly happening in the brain, it automatically leads to a decrease in the activity of the frontal lobes. That's why people start to become forgetful and why they begin to experience attention deficits. It is precisely the prefrontal cortex that is responsible for rational thinking and for impulse control. The prefrontal cortex is what governs rational thought and impulse regulation. And for this reason, a person cannot leave because they are filled with fears. This is the activated image of that, and they simply cannot imagine. Their thinking is blocked. How will I live well without the narcissist? That is, their brain is balanced. In other words, their brain is balanced in such a way as to simply continue staying in this fear and enduring it, just to keep remaining in this fear and enduring it. So as a result, the longer you stay with a narcissist, the harder it is for you to let them go, the harder it is for you to leave them, because the brain seeks out this cycle. It has already made this its new normal, and it can't get out of it. The cycle is closed. It has already made this its new normal, and it can't break out of this cycle. The cycle is closed, and that's why it's so hard to leave a narcissist and not go back to them, even in your thoughts. And that's why it's so hard to leave a narcissist and not go back to them, even in your thoughts. But there are strategies that can help with this, that can reprogram the brain. And I talk a lot about this in my workshop on manipulating narcissists, how to recognize them and stop falling for their tricks, how to recognize them and stop falling for their tricks. Sign up, guys, right now. This workshop is absolutely free. This workshop is absolutely free. Right here through the link in the pinned comment.